So some stats. I'm sure you guys had a little time to read it here. But this is just that USPS kit that was used by the Phishing triad. So some of the stats behind it, crazy numbers, based on some data from Ford Merrill, who was quoted on Crypto Security's recent article on this problem. $15 billion was stolen in 2024 alone, and over 100,000 SMS messages were sent per day, and this is just by one group, and there's multiple groups out there. So we've been facing the problem with phishing kits for many years now. It's not a new issue. It's been around for probably 3 years at this point. Really became an issue in end of 2023 into 2024 when we saw those USPS kits popping up. Now it's toll scams along with some of that, some other stuff that we're getting in the US, but it's obviously a worldwide issue. It's targeting people in Russia, it's targeting people in China as well. It's not just them targeting us. There's also other threat actors out there targeting them. And the way we've kind of dealt with this issue is just reporting the domain and IP address to hosting providers and hoping they do all the work and take down that domain or take down that server that's hosting the phishing kit. And they just act, they don't act on it, or they act way too slow that they've already collected thousands of victims by that point, and they just move on to the next domain name because they've registered hundreds of thousands of domains, and it's not an issue for the people creating these kits. When it comes to like the authorities, so reporting this out to things like the Internet Crime Center reporting service, they will just track that data. They haven't really acted on it. There's not really the resources for them to act on such a wide scale issue, worldwide issue, where they can access all these different servers worldwide. It's also not really in the authority of the FBI other than to issue subpoenas, I guess, and stuff like that, to do anything against these worldwide threats. So there's nothing really being done other than by people doing personal research, like myself. There's some companies out there that have done some work, so like RE Security and Silent Push recently put out some info on this mission tree and doing some research on it. But we've simply been going about this all wrong. Why we simply just throwing this issue at the host provider and their authorities, who either the host providers don't really care for the most part, and then law enforcement doesn't have the capacity or resources, skill set, money to do anything about this. So my proposed solution, and the reason why I wanted to give this talk, is to fight back ourselves. And that doesn't have to be getting into those servers. It just has to be doing something, finding some information disclosure, going after a kit, looking at it from a web investor's perspective. And hey, maybe this kit reveals all the other domain names associated with that kit. And now you can take down 100 domain names instead of reporting just one. Things like that. Local law enforcement doesn't have the skill for this for the most part. And so if we can give them the resources to that by contributing ourselves, hopefully that can help this pervasive problem. Yeah. So let's get started. And it all got started. I kind of going to get far away. But yeah, with the text from wrong man's wife, and that was my wife, fell for this text message here. And because of that, I got really upset. This is where my DEF CON talk kind of came in last year, where I talk over coming after this USPS phishing kit that many people saw or got a message from. Either you ignored it because most of you know it was a scam, like with a domain name, but a lot of people did fall for this. Over 400,000 unique credit cards, as I mentioned earlier. So looking at this, just from again, looking at the flaws, it was using WebSockets. That was one of the first things I noticed. And it was using that to get static HTML files for some reason. I was looking at that, I was like, okay, that's interesting. But you can grab any file with that. So if you just add some little dots, slashes, you can go ahead and grab set your password or set a shadow. But unfortunately, this was a container, and it didn't have like SSH keys. It didn't have any password hashes in there, even in shadow. So it wasn't really anything interesting, other than that I could access some of the like access logs for the server. So I was able to get some of the domain names, not domains, IP addresses that they used to set it up. That was really it. And I wanted more than that. And so I looked through a little bit and I found a little flaw So this little error message is all I got. But using that, because it didn't show up anywhere else, I was able to find a blind time-based SQL injection in them, and we were able to get their database. So a lot of stuff in here. Go over some of the tables, but config you might think is interesting, but it didn't really have much other than like what countries could visit that site. It would like filter by IP address, like an activation code for the kit, like that sort of thing. Records was encrypted victim data. User info was also encrypted. And then admin had some encrypted / hashed data, but you can see the admin table here. The usernames were encrypted, and the passwords were hashed. And I couldn't. It looked like MD5. It turned out it was MD5, but I didn't know that at the time. I had to get a copy of the kit and actually reverse it to find that out. But one of the main things you might see here is that Telegram link to somebody's profile. And in that guy's profile, so Wang Du Yu, and he's still out there, he's still doing this, Snitchy Triad creator. It led me to another link from there to this group. And in that group, I found out that this was a kit. This wasn't just a standalone item. I don't work in threat intel. I didn't know kits were a thing at the time. I was just doing this because I was mad at them. They stole my wife's credit card and our credit card. Yeah, that's when I looked up his name and I found this article from RE Security where they had done some previous research that same year. And they found another SQL injection. So there was a previous SQL injection in that kit. They're not good at writing. They were so on PHP. And he had patched that because he had read this article or something. He had noticed it. And so he patched that flaw, but now I had a new one. And so I reached out to RE Security and I was like, hey, can I get a copy of that kit? So you might have remembered, I have an LFI. I can grab some of the files, but obviously I can't list a directory. I don't know all the files in the system. And also I want to dynamically reverse it because that's the code for the kit up top. And kind of disgusting. You can't really statically reverse that. I mean, there's probably a way to, but even dynamic reverse engineering of it was tough because it was doing introspection on itself. You can't just add like echo statements in there to print out the contents of stuff. And so I used a technique recommended from a former classmate of mine to do eval hooking, which was something I hadn't heard of before. But basically, this code has to get executed by eval functions. If you hook into that eval function, you get the plaintext PHP of what's running. And you can see down below what some of that might look like. And you can see some of my comments here. So like, this is what the strings actually were, so like the variable names were. So I was able to figure out that it was encrypting usernames with AES 128 CBC. And so that was helpful. And then I was able to figure out the key and then the IV from that. He was using his like username in there. So WDY for Wang Yu. And I'm just spelling out his name there. So not great security, but also I guess it was kind of security by obscurity because you didn't know what he was encrypting his stuff with unless you were able to do this. And so from here, just to get through this because this has already been published out there, found out the kits were also backdoored by their creator. So every time you logged into the kit, they would send your session token to him so he could log into your kit as well as you. He also would, I figured out how to decrypt the usernames, as I mentioned. I figured out the hashing algorithm, which is, again, MD5, but they would do 3 MD5 hashes of the password, along with adding a salt on the password. So I was able to start cracking those passwords at that point, and a lot of them were the default password or just like simple like admin 00006666, stuff like that. So really terrible passwords for the most part. I think there was only 2 kits that I was not able to crack passwords for out of like 80 or so. Pretty poor password policies. They even had them. But yeah, and because of this, I was able to automate the collection. They had API endpoints, so I was able to reach, well, not API, but I was able to basically use them as API endpoints and reach out and farm all the data from all these kits that we were able to find, and then collect some stats. As you can see them down there. Data was entered, like they went through the whole victim process 1.2 million times from these kits. They also entered 438,000 unique credit cards. And then the scammers were for this particular kit, we're using over 1,100 domains. It's a lot. And this was just the ones I found. There's way more out there. But I was just scraping off like URLscan.io and Reddit and things like that. But yeah, here we are 1 year later. I've already given that talk. Just want to give you a brief summary of it. We found 8 new kits since then. Over 1,000 copies of those kits being hosted. Found 3 major flaws within those 8 kits, so able to kind of do some exploitation with that. And then yeah, hours wasting away staring at my screen was immeasurable. So the first target after this USPS scam was Sniper DZ. Is anyone familiar with Sniper DZ by chance? PTI folks? No? All right. Well, Unit 42 did a little investigation on them, as well as like the Hacker News, and there's a few other articles out there about them. They're basically a free phishing kit that you can Google right now and go log in or create an account, log in, and even without like paying for their like paid plan, you can go basically spin up a kit. It doesn't spin up for you, but you can go use one of their domains. And so some of the main stuff I was looking at the time was that victims page and that scams page. So for free, you can use that scams page, create like an Instagram login page or like Facebook login. It's like easy like social media like phishing pages, I guess. And when somebody enters the data, it shows up in your victim's dashboard. It also goes to the admin as well, though. So yeah, you don't have any privacy there. But when I was looking at that, I was looking at the like where the victims enter the data. So this is, if you can see it, this is basically the push request that was sent when the victim enters like their username and password. And I found a little stored cross-site script in that, and so you can see the payload in there, which I'll show in a second. Here, they did have some sort of web application firewall, some weird thing I hadn't ever heard of. I forget the name now, unfortunately. But this payload was able to bypass that, and I was able to just send their cookies to me. So the first one that came in was this guy, JNR Taker. And so I was able to go on URL scan, find actual like phishing pages up there that are being hosted by them. And so these were actual admins of these kits. So JNR Taker was one of them. I found a bunch more after that. But then I did a little trick. So with this payload, it would redirect to my domain, send me their cookies. But then I would redirect them back home. And so if they clicked on victim, like it would just redirect them back home from their view. And so they could never see their victims' data, which is good. Unfortunately, but also fortunately, it attracted the attention of the admin and the creator of that platform. So you can see him here. His name is Gwediz, or Gweds. I don't know how you say it. But you can see his IP address that he reached out from. You can see his tokens, obviously his cookies. And so I was able to use those and log in SIM, obviously. But just a little geolocation. No, it's not a publicly known proxy, and he uses this IP address very often. So unless he has like a personal proxy server in Algeria, this is likely his IP address. Yeah. So login is him. You get like a little admin panel. It's not much, but there's some other stuff you can do as well. You get all the victim data. So if you click on if I clicked on the victims page, I would see every phishing admin's data in there. And yeah, I could change the URLs, do whatever. But yeah, now that I have admin access, which is basically all I was looking for, I started poking around other areas of the platform. So we found some other juicy stuff as well. This is like the biggest thing. Obviously, you get admin access, but he had other stuff sitting around, which is kind of interesting, that just cool to think about. The first one, just doing simple directory enumeration, was able to find this like JSON endpoint, which had some interesting like analytics pages. You might notice it says NAN there, and that's because he has an endpoint there you can basically reach out to and add whatever data you want. And he was using it basically to send his like his income from people purchasing the kit to it. And but you can add whatever arguments you want there, and it shows up in that JSON. and so it messes up his dashboard. It doesn't look nice. So you can go spam that if you want. Be a dick to him because he's a dick. Yeah. uh, Moving on from that, found another endpoint called live_chat. This is also still live right now. This is his like AI chat logs with websims.ai. He's just hosting it like in an iframe basically on his site. And so you can see him. This is him creating a like support chat basically, and like build up the database and everything. But you can see some cool stuff in there. So you can see him like creating different phishing pages as well. You can see like put the script source of the page to like one of his actual domains. So I didn't know about the /bz.com domain that he owns, so I was able to go look at that as well. Didn't really find much there, but uh, you could find some cool info from his chats. I got his Firebase config, which is kind of cool. Hopefully Google can do something with that. And then you can see some other stuff. So some of the endpoints he was using in development to reach out and collect that victim data. Uh, yeah, so he's hosting it through a site called Pantheon site, which is like a free like dev hosting thing that you can set up. So he had a PHP endpoint on there that was collecting it. But he's also just like me. I'm trying to create stuff. Uh, so he's not saying please and thank you, of course. So Terminator's going to come after him. But yeah, here's his usernames if anyone wants them. That's his WebSim AI usernames that he uses. Obviously, not great attribution back to him, but like if you can do something with that, there you go. And then also I could double check that we were right about his location. It wasn't Algeria. He was logging in from Algeria and viewing it from there. That Japan one's me viewing it. But yeah, a lot of the only transfers from me, Japan, and people in Algeria, which probably him. Oh, Algeria. So he's based. So we'll go back a few slides. There. So that's his IP address right there, and we got that from stealing his session tokens and basically his browser sending us from his IP address. Yeah, and that just kind of confirmed it from WebSims that he was also viewing it from Algeria. So kind of put that together. Yeah, moving on from Sniper DZ, some more USPS kits. So some stuff here. This particular kit is one that I didn't find myself. This is one that I was actually just working on like my day job, and I got a message from Brian Lowe. You might know him, but he's a pen tester and he's like an online friend of mine. And he said that a member of his family, his daughter, I believe, had gotten a message, like another USPS message, but it was a totally different kit. So it looked similar to like the main kit that you might see out there, this mission triad kit, but it wasn't. He had looked at like the source code and stuff and started poking around. He sent me over like the source endpoint to look at, and it was actually really interesting because when you go to that /source, you can see all the domain names being used by that kit. That's unauthenticated. You can just go view that. So cool stuff there, obviously. And so poking around even more, found /log. You can see user entering stuff. So some like, I mean, that's IPv6, but you see another IPv4 address here. Like some stuff about people entering data. Oh, pardon? So has the IPv6 first basically will validate or invalidate where they're coming from? Yeah, so they usually have. Basically, when they use IPv6, that actually is the real location where the IPv4 is different. I think it was just they had an IPv6 like public address they were using, and so it showed up here. They didn't have an IPv4. Usually they log the IP address because they'll have like an API key in the kit that the person who hosts it will put in, and it will go check like an IP location API to check is this coming from the US because we're targeting in the US for USPS. If they're not coming from the US, just redirect them to like Google or something. No, I don't. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Not for this kit. Some kits might, but I haven't seen that. This is not the admins, by the way. These are usually victims. You can see the user enter type, but user entering data. Um, But to get some of the admin data, you can hit the /admin endpoint. So these are admin. It doesn't have their IP addresses, unfortunately, like last login or anything, but you can see their usernames and their hash passwords. I never got what they're probably using some salt along with like multiple rounds of hashing. But I never was able to get a copy of this kit in order to get that data, so I couldn't crack any of their passwords. But we found some other bypasses to get around that, which I'll get into in a little bit. But you can also have a card endpoint, so you get some credit card data of the victims. That's just also unauthenticated. But to get in to actually be an admin is like a stupid simple bypass. And no, I didn't forget to edit the template. You just capitalize the first letter. So admin add, but with a capital A, bypasses their authentication check. And well, here this is just a equal error, but you could add an admin, do that. And you could also add little things to it. So what I did here was, well, my reason behind adding this instead of like just breaking the whole kit. If you break the whole kit, first of all, you might ruin evidence for law enforcement. Second of all, you will alert them that their kit's down, basically. And if you just do something like this, they're not going in and checking what the victim's doing every day. They set it up, make sure it works once, and they don't go back and check it. They just collect the victim data. If you add a little like message or something like that, hopefully the victims won't enter data into there, and they won't be alerted about it. Yeah. This is some of the stuff that was doing with this kit. So doing stuff like that. And so I'll talk about an analysis about it, but once I found this, I was able to take the favicon hash of the kit and then like just mass scan for it on census and use that to go like like throw exploits at the kits and do this to them. Yeah, moving into the analysis portion. So we went through some examples, but there was more kits than this out there that were vulnerable to stuff and different misconfigurations. I just can't go through all of them. I just don't have enough time. But let's go over finding the kit. So first of all, you have to find the kit in order to test if it's vulnerable to anything. So monitoring feeds like URL scan. URL scan's a great one. It's mostly free. And you can find stuff on there. Virus Total isn't free, but they have stuff in there. If you happen to have access to that feed, which is hella expensive. But Reddit's a good one. r/scams, they'll post like screenshots of text messages, which will usually have the URL in them. So you can go look at that. As I mentioned before, you can track favicon hashes to find them once you find one. There's also other ways to get that. And then Telegram is usually how they communicate and sell the kit and advertise it. So if you can get into the right Telegram channels, you can find people advertising those kits or referencing them and join another channel and kind of follow the trail down from there. And if you want to have the funds, or if you have the funds to pay for it and you kind of want to like reverse engineer it, tear it apart, you can buy the kit from them. I don't know. It's not, I don't like financially supporting them, but also if you're going to do it, tear apart the kit and then go like mass take down those kits or like mess with them, I think that's a good thing. And then you can also look at like carding forums. And I'll cover a little bit of that as well. So like URL scan, when you're looking at some of these URLs, that's just a little tip for URL scans specifically, because this is what I use a lot. When you're looking at like a URL that might be phishing, but you're not sure, and it just says like Google or something like that, just go over to that HTTP tab and look at that redirect chain, because usually if you're not like on a mobile device or you're not from the right country or something, it'll just go ahead, go to the endpoint. But then once it realizes that it's the wrong user agent or wrong IP address, it will go and redirect to like Google or Microsoft or something generic. So that's usually a telltale sign, like why is google.com getting scanned by URL scan, but the submitted URL is like a bit.ly link. Doesn't make any sense. Like why would you create a bit.ly link of Google? So you can go just look at that redirect chain and get access to the URL that way. Another thing, so I mentioned carding forums. So these are the usernames from that USPS kit I had shown earlier. If you just go ahead and take like a lot of these usernames have like a common like prefix. You go ahead and like plug that in, you can do some searching around. You can find it in like carding forums. You can see where, okay, they're collecting the data on these kits, and here's where they're selling them. And that like percentage is like active, like usable cards. So 75% of them are usable by the person that buys them, that sort of thing. Um, for next step of analysis, we got encrypted communication. So a lot of these kits, they started out pretty simple to analyze, and they've kind of like just built up from there. They started encrypting their communication, not just like TLS, like HTTPS. They're doing like custom AES configurations, like weird encryption algorithms to encrypt their traffic in between, like over WebSockets or over HTTP. And that makes it a little bit difficult to analyze. It's kind of annoying because you got to go into the JavaScript and like see how they're doing that. And usually they have started obfuscating their JavaScript, and we'll cover that as well. But this is what the traffic kind of looks like when you man in the middle of it with like Perp Suite. You can see this kind of just like junk data. You can tell it's like base64 encoded. Uh, but when you base64 decode it, it's just going to be encrypted data, encrypted bytes. And this particular one is the Dark Yellow kit, probably like 6 months ago. They've updated it since then, but yeah, this is kind of what the JavaScript looks like. You can see some of the like you'll reach out to the API endpoint, put like a random string at the end of it. So just anything slash API anything is what the endpoint actually like shipping. And you can see the Magia request, Magia response. It's what they were using to uh, encrypt the data. And so looking at some of this, and a lot of kits will do this, they will send like from the server, they'll send config, and that includes all the domain names. So if you're able to get that key to decrypt that traffic, you can get the config, and that will have all the domain names as well as usually some of their data that they leave in there for whatever reason. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It was pretty straightforward, but now it's gotten a little bit harder because of that obfuscated JavaScript. Um, yeah, this is Rabbit decryption, by the way. This is what Dark Yellow Kit was using for a while. There's not really great implementations of it other than in some like JavaScript libraries, like React stuff. But yeah, getting into that obfuscated JavaScript, it makes it harder to signature like network traffic wise. Obviously more difficult to analyze. Again, headaches. Obfuscator.io is by far the largest like obfuscator that they use. That's just because like it's actually like a pretty decent obfuscator, especially if you do like a lot of rounds of it. And there's a way to like decrypt that or deobfuscate that though. There's a great GitHub repository linked here that you can run. It does have like a web version, but for a lot of these kits, because they do so many rounds and there's so much JavaScript, like it'll just like crash your browser. Just uses up a ton of memory. And so when you copy that over, you can clone down that repository. You can set like a large amount of memory for it and run that through. It does take a while though. But this is the web version of it. So you can take, this is the JavaScript that is obfuscator.io obfuscated, and the deobfuscated version is here. So you can get some of the strings, you can get other data there. You can see like some of the patterns. So this is from Sniper Easy, updated version as of recently. You can see like they're like taking like victim ID, and then they'll place it over here, and each thing is separate. Each piece of data is separated by this like hashtag. Dash. It's on hashtag. So you can get like an understanding of what's going on and how they're sending their traffic, how they're encrypting it, what endpoints they're using, that sort of thing. And then this is from Darkula. This is some of the deobfuscated JavaScript. You can see like line 13,900, and there's a bunch more after that as well. So they're pretty large JavaScript files that are obfuscated by it. So that's why the web version usually doesn't work very well. When you're analyzing these kits, so now that you have some of the background on like how they're obfuscating their JavaScript, look for there. Here's the vulnerabilities that you should look for. Main one by far, I'm going to start at the bottom, is that information disclosure. Those configs are always there, I found, like basically every kit. You can get those domain names and then mass report them or mass block them, whatever you choose. Kind of do both, hopefully. Um, and moving on up from that, we got our cross-site scripting. As you saw with the Sniper DZ kit, you can use that to get session tokens, log in as admin, that sort of thing. You can also do that to reveal IP addresses of people running those kits. So even if it's not a stored thing, maybe you can do something with a reflected cross-site scripting to get their IP address somehow. You can be creative with that. SQL injection, found that in two different kits. Obviously, there's the first one I mentioned, which is that Smishing Triad group. That was obviously SQL injection vulnerable, but there's other ones that are. So just when you're playing around with those input that victims send, that sort of thing, just throw in like little like single quotes, double quotes, semicolons. Just throw weird characters in there, see what happens. If there's like a 500 like error code or like some weird error that pops up, dig further into that. And finally, authentication bypasses, as you saw with that second USPS kit. Uh, Stupid, simple bypasses for authentication, or they just forget to add authentication to certain endpoints. And so you're able to get in that way. Yeah, thank you for coming to my talk.